Phone rang at 1:47 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I'd been staring at the ceiling fan for an hour, the way old men do when sleep stops being a friend and starts being a stranger you used to know. My wife, Annette, was breathing slow beside me. The kind of slow that meant she was deep under, and I almost let it ring out. Wrong number, I figured. Some kid pocket dialing. Then I saw the name on the screen and my chest went cold before my brain caught up. Tobias. My grandson. I picked up on the third ring, and he was already crying. Not the hiccuping kind a little boy does over a scraped knee. The other kind. The kind where the body forgets to breathe between the words. Grandpa Roy, Grandpa, are you awake? I sat up so fast my back made a sound like a door pulling free from a frame. I'm here, son. I'm right here. What's wrong? I'm at St. Mercy, the hospital. The one off Route 12. What happened? Are you hurt? There was a long pause. I could hear something behind him, the soft beeping you only ever hear in hospitals, and somebody's pager going off down a hallway. He was whispering. That was the part that scared me most. A 12-year-old boy doesn't whisper in a hospital at 2 in the morning unless he's afraid somebody might hear. My arm's broken. They said it's broken in 2 places. My mom is downstairs filling out papers. Grandpa, I'm listening. Take your time. Grandpa, he said I fell off the porch. Mr. Kessler said I fell off the porch trying to get a frisbee off the roof. But I didn't, Grandpa. I didn't. He grabbed me by the wrist and he twisted it and he threw me into the side of the truck. And Mom isn't. She isn't believing me. She told the nurse the same story he told. She told the nurse I fell. I want to tell you what went through my head right then, but I'm not sure I can. There's no clean word for it. It was like somebody opened a window in February and the whole house got cold at once. I'd known Cyrus Kessler for 2 years. He'd married my daughter Lenora last spring on a piece of leased land out by the river with a barbecue and a borrowed sound system. I'd shaken his hand. I'd carved him a turkey breast at Thanksgiving. I told myself, this is what your daughter wants, and you keep your mouth shut about what you don't like, because that's what fathers of grown daughters do. But here's the thing about being 67 years old. You have heard a lot of voices in your life. You have heard children lie about cookies, and grown men lie about money, and politicians lie about everything. And you learn, if you're paying attention, that there is a sound a person makes when they are telling the truth, and they are terrified at the same time. It does not sound like anything else. My grandson was making that sound. Tobias, listen to me. Listen carefully. I want you to stay right where you are. Don't tell anybody you called me. Don't say a word about this conversation. I'm getting in the truck, and I'm coming to you right now. You understand me? Okay. Are you in a room by yourself? They put me in a curtain bay. They said the doctor wants to talk to my mom alone before they put the cast on. That was the second thing that froze me. The doctor wanted to talk to her alone. Doctors don't do that unless they've seen something they don't like. St. Mercy off 12. I'm 40 minutes out. You hold on, son. Grandpa? Yeah, he's here. He drove us. He's in the waiting room with Mom. I told him I loved him, and I hung up and I sat on the edge of the bed in my boxer shorts. And for about 10 seconds, I could not make my hands work. Annette had woken up halfway through. She didn't ask questions. She just looked at my face and started pulling on her robe and saying, "What is it, Roy? What is it?" When I told her, she didn't gasp or cry. She has been a nurse for 38 years. She got very, very quiet. And that quiet of hers is more dangerous than most people's anger. "Take my phone too," she said, "in case yours dies. And Roy, yeah, don't put your hands on him. Whatever you see when you get there, don't put your hands on him. We need this done right. I drove out of our development with the truck still half cold, and I had no memory of the first 10 miles. None. I came back into myself somewhere around the gas station on the county line, and I was going 85 and a 55 and gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles had gone the color of old bone. I made myself slow down. I went back through every dinner, every birthday, every Sunday afternoon Cyrus had been around my grandson, and I started seeing things I had not let myself see before. Tobias flinching when Cyrus reached for the salt. Tobias going quiet when Cyrus walked into a room. This summer, Tobias used to swim like a fish, and then suddenly didn't want to take his shirt off at the lake. The way he'd started biting the inside of his cheek when he ate. A little tick, a nervous habit he hadn't had when he was small. I'd noticed all of it. And I'd told myself, he's 12. Kids change. Kids get private about their bodies. None of my business. I had a sour taste in my mouth the whole drive, and it wasn't from the coffee. I got to St. Mercy at 2:31. I know because I looked at the clock in the dashboard and made myself memorize the number, because Annette had told me on the phone, write down every time, write down every detail. This is going to matter later. I parked in the emergency lot. I went in through the sliding doors, and the woman at the desk asked who I was visiting, and I said my grandson Tobias Halverhill. And she looked something up on her screen and said the family was in Bay 7 and she'd paged somebody. I walked past the waiting room on the way, and that's when I saw them. Lenora was sitting in one of those plastic chairs that everybody hates, hunched over with her arms wrapped around her stomach like she was cold. And Cyrus was beside her, leaned back, one ankle on his other knee, scrolling on his phone. His 12-year-old stepson upstairs with a broken arm in 2 places, and he was checking his phone like he was waiting on an oil change. He looked up when I came past. He smiled at me. Big, easy smile, the kind of smile a man practices in a mirror. Hey, Roy, thanks for coming. Kid took a real bad spill. I made my mouth do something that I hope looked like a smile back. Where's Tobias? Bay 7. They're still waiting on the cast guy. Lenore looked up at me, and her eyes were red and her mouth was trembling. My daughter. My only daughter. 41 years old and looking at me like she was 9 and had broken a vase. I wanted to grab her and shake her and say, why don't you believe him? Why don't you believe your own son? What is wrong with you? But Annette's voice was in my head. Don't make this worse. Don't tip your hand. Do this right. I'm going to go sit with him a minute, sweetheart. Okay, Daddy. I walked past Cyrus and I felt his eyes on the back of my neck the whole way down the hall. Tobias was sitting up on the gurney in Bay 7 with his right arm braced in some kind of temporary blue splint, and his face was the color of skim milk. His eyes were huge. When he saw me, he tried to be brave about it, and his chin started shaking, and I crossed the room and I put my hand in the back of his head the way you do, with a very small child, the way I used to do when he was 3 years old and afraid of the bathtub drain. And he just leaned into my chest and didn't make a sound. He shook. He didn't cry. He just shook. I'm here, I told him. I'm here, son. I'm not going anywhere. After a minute, he pulled back and he looked toward the curtain and he whispered, Did Mom see you come in? Yes. Did he? Yes. His face did something I have never forgotten. It got older. Right there on the gurney. He aged about 5 years and 2 seconds, and he said, very quiet, he's going to know I called you. He's not going to do anything tonight. I promise you. I'm not leaving this hospital until you do. The curtain moved and a doctor came in. Young guy, mid-30s, glasses, a beard he was trying to grow that wasn't quite working yet. He had a clipboard and the careful expression that medical people have when something isn't adding up for them, and they're trying to figure out how to say so. Your family? I'm his grandfather, Roy Halverhill. The mother is my daughter. Mr. Halverhill, I'm Dr. Asher. Listen, can I speak to you for a moment outside? I patted Tobias on the knee, and I told him I'd be back in 30 seconds. And I followed the doctor about 10 feet down the hall to a little alcove with a coffee machine that was making a sound like an old refrigerator. Dr. Parker, Asher looked over my shoulder once. Then he looked at me. He spoke very low. Sir, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'd like an honest answer. Is the child in a safe home? I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. What did you see? The fracture pattern. The story doesn't fit the injury. A child falling off a porch and landing on his arm gets one kind of break. Tobias has a spiral fracture of the radius and a hairline of the ulna. Spiral fractures happen when you twist the bone. They don't happen from falls. I also see 2 yellowing bruises on his upper arm in the shape of a hand grip, and an older bruise on his ribs that is in the stage of healing, inconsistent with anything that happened tonight. I'm a mandatory reporter, Mr. Halverhill. I'm already on the phone with the county. I just want to know what I'm walking into when I go back in there. I felt my eyes get hot. I don't cry easy. I haven't cried in front of another man since my own father's funeral in 1998, but I'll tell you. Standing there in front of that young doctor with the bad beard, I had to look at the ceiling tiles and clench my jaw to keep my face still. He told me on the phone, 20 minutes ago his stepfather did this. Twisted his arm. Threw him into the side of a truck. His mother, my daughter, she's repeating the stepfather's story. I think she's scared of him too, son. I think I missed it. I think I've been missing it for a long time. Dr. Asher nodded slow. Okay. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to keep him admitted overnight for observation. That gives us time. Social Services is going to send somebody within the hour. I want you to stay with him. Do not let the stepfather back in that room. Do you understand me? You are now his support person of record as far as I am concerned, until somebody with a badge tells me otherwise. Yes, sir. And Mr. Halverhill. Yeah. You're doing the right thing. A lot of grandparents in your shoes don't pick up the phone. I went back into the bay. I closed the curtain behind me. Tobias was watching the gap in the curtain like he was waiting for a wolf. The doctor knows, I said. He saw it. He already called the county. They're sending somebody. He started crying then, quietly. Both eyes just leaking. He wiped his nose on his good arm and he said, he's going to be so mad at her. At your mother. At me. For telling. He told me if I were told he'd tell Mom I was lying. And she'd believe him because he's the husband and I'm just a kid. And that's how it works in a house. He said that. That's how it works in a house. I sat down on the rolling stool. I made my voice as steady as I could. Tobias, look at me. I want you to tell me everything. From the beginning. The first time. I don't care how small you think it is. I want to know. Because tonight, that all stops. Tonight. He looked at me for a long time. I think he was deciding whether I was real, whether I was going to be there in the morning, whether grown men keep promises. And then he started talking, and what came out of that boy for the next 20 minutes was the worst thing I've ever sat through in my life. I'm not going to repeat all of it here. Some of it isn't mine to repeat. But I will tell you the shape of it. It had started a year and a half ago. Small. A grab on the back of the neck if Tobias didn't answer fast enough. A flick on the ear at dinner. Then it was being held under the cold shower for not making his bed. Then it was being locked out on the back porch in November in a t-shirt for 2 hours because he forgot to feed the dog. Cyrus was very careful, my grandson said. He never left marks where they showed. He hit the back of the head where the hair covered it. He squeezed the upper arms. He used the door frame. Would press Tobias up against a door frame with a forearm across the throat, just for a second, just long enough, and there was never anything to point to. And he had a rule. The rule was, your mom's been through enough. Don't you put more on her plate. That was the leash. That was the whole leash. A 12-year-old boy who loves his mother and watched her go through a bad divorce from his bio dad 3 years ago, and a hard year of being broke, and a hard year being lonely. And then this charming man walks in and makes her laugh again. And that boy will swallow anything, before he puts more on her plate. Tonight, Tobias said, He had come home from school with a B- on a math test. Cyrus had been drinking since lunch. Cyrus had wanted to see the test. Tobias had handed it over. Cyrus had said the words don't matter. What mattered is he grabbed Tobias by the right wrist and twisted, and when Tobias yelled, Cyrus threw him sideways into the side of his pickup hard enough to break a rib if it had hit different. But instead, the arm took most of it, and the arm went, the thing that broke me, the part I'll carry to my grave, is what Tobias said next. I screamed for Mom. She was inside. I screamed her name and she didn't come out. And I think she heard me, Grandpa. I think she heard me and she stayed inside. I had to stand up. I had to turn around and face the wall for a second. Because if I had looked at him in that moment with what was on my face, I would have scared him worse than he was already scared. I put both my hands on the wall. I made myself count to 10. I made myself grieve. When I turned back around, I said, Your mom is sick, son. Not sick in her body. Sick in her thinking. He has done something to her thinking. That is not the same thing as her not loving you. Do you hear me? I'm not asking you to forgive her yet. I'm telling you what I know is true. Your mother loves you. Something is wrong with her right now. And we are going to fix it. But the first part of fixing it is, you are not going home to that house tonight. You are not going home to that house tomorrow. You are coming home with me and your grandma, and he is not setting foot in our driveway. Do you believe me? He looked at me. He looked at me for a long time. Then he gave me one nod. Just one. That was enough. 40 minutes later, the social worker came. Her name was Mrs. Albright, and she was about my age, gray hair and a no-nonsense bun, the kind of woman who had clearly seen the bottom of the human condition more than once and decided to keep showing up to work anyway. She talked to Tobias alone for half an hour. Then she talked to me. Then she went up to the waiting room and asked Lenora to come back. She did not invite Cyrus. I watched Cyrus's face from the end of the hall when that happened. He had been waiting almost 3 hours by then. He had been drinking the burnt coffee from the machine and pretending to scroll on his phone. But I had been watching him out of the corner of my eye, and I'll tell you, the man had not actually looked at his screen in over an hour. He was sweating along the hairline. And when Mrs. Albright walked past him and called only Lenora's name, he stood up. I'm her husband. I'm his stepfather. I'm coming back. Mrs. Albright did not even slow down. Sir, take a seat. We'll speak with you separately. I have a right, sir. She said it the way a kindergarten teacher of 40 years says things, without raising her voice, without breaking stride. He sat down. But before he sat down, his eyes found me at the end of the hall. And he looked at me, and I looked at him. And I want to tell you, I have stared down some men in my life. I sold construction equipment for 31 years, and I have stared down men who could have broken me in half. None of them ever scared me the way that man scared me in that hallway, not because of what he might do to me. Because of what I now understood he had been doing to a 12-year-old boy in the basement of a house I'd been welcome in. I made a small gesture with my hand. I let him see it. I tapped the wall twice with 2 fingers. I don't know why, something old and stupid, like a man tapping the side of a fence he's about to climb over. He understood it. He understood exactly what it meant. And he sat down, and he did not look at me again. What Lenora told Mrs. Meader Albright in the next 20 minutes, I learned about later in pieces over the next year, partly from Mrs. Albright's report and partly from Lenora herself once she was finally ready to talk. The short of it is this. She had known. Not all of it. Not the worst of it. But enough. She had known he was rough with the boy. She had told herself it was discipline, that Tobias needed a man in the house, that she had been too soft on him after the divorce. She had told herself a lot of things. She told herself a lot of things. She told them to herself in the order Cyrus had trained her to tell them. The night of the broken arm, She had heard her son scream. She had been in the laundry room. She had stood very still with a wet towel in her hands, and she had counted to 30. And then she had walked out the back door and seen her son on the ground holding his arm, and Cyrus standing over him saying, "He fell off the porch trying to get the frisbee. Get the truck keys." She had said okay. She had gotten the truck keys. And then, in St. Mercy, sitting in front of a social worker who was looking at her with no judgment and no patience either, my daughter Lenora put her face in her hands, and she said the sentence that opened the door. She said, "I think I have been a coward for a long time." That was the start of it. That sentence right there. I'll tell you the rest fast, because the rest is mostly paperwork and the slow grind of decent people doing their jobs. The county filed an emergency protective order before sunrise. Tobias did not go home. Tobias came home with me and Annette, and he stayed in our guest room, which we have since started calling his room, for 11 months. Cyrus was arrested 2 days later at his place of work in front of a lot of his co-workers, which I will not lie to you and say I did not enjoy hearing about. He was charged with felony child abuse, and the older injuries gave the DA enough to charge him with more than just the broken arm. The trial took 14 months. He took a plea 3 weeks before it would have gone to a jury. 7 years. Out in 4 if he behaves, which I would bet a kidney he does not. There's a registry his name lives on now. He cannot be within 500 feet of my grandson for the rest of his natural life. Lenora moved in with us for the first 6 months. She went to a program 3 days a week. Then she went 4. She started seeing a counselor who specialized in coercive control, which was a term I had not known existed at 67 years old, and which I have since read 3 books about. She and Tobias did some sessions together with a family therapist. The first one was the hardest thing any of us have ever done. She apologized to him with her whole body. She told him she had heard him scream and she had stayed in the laundry room, and she would carry that for the rest of her life. And he, my grandson, 12 years old, told her he forgave her. Not in those words. In 12-year-old words. He said, "I know he made you small, Mom. I know what it's like." And he hugged her. And she broke in half. And I went out on the porch because some things are not for grandfathers to watch. It has been almost 3 years since the night of the phone call. Tobias is 15 now. Tall. Taller than his mother. He plays trumpet in the school band, which is a thing I never could have predicted. And he is the kind of 15-year-old who will still hug his grandmother in public, which tells you everything you need to know about whether he is going to be okay. He is going to be okay. He still has hard nights sometimes. He still flinches at certain sounds. He still doesn't like being in small rooms with men he doesn't know. We are working on all of it. But he's going to be okay. Lenora is 2 years sober from a drinking habit she had started, in secret, in the last year of her marriage to Cyrus, which I had also not known about, and which she has been clear-eyed and honest about ever since. She bought a small house 20 minutes from ours. Tobias splits his time. He has 2 homes now, where before he had nowhere to be safe. And both of those homes have my phone number on the fridge, in red marker, with the words "call any time of day or night, no reason needed, no questions asked." Because that is the policy in this family from here on out. I want to say a few things before I let you go, and I want to say them as a man who almost didn't pick up the phone. As a man who almost rolled over and let it ring out, who almost told himself it was a wrong number, who almost slept through the worst thing happening to the people he loved most. The first thing. If a child tells you something, a grandchild, a neighbor's kid, a niece, a kid you coach, if a child tells you something and there is even half a chance it is true, you believe them first and you ask questions second. The cost of believing a child who is lying is some embarrassment and an awkward conversation. The cost of not believing a child who is telling the truth is what was happening in my daughter's house for a year and a half while I sat at her dinner table eating mashed potatoes and not asking why the boy didn't talk anymore. The second thing, a man who is hurting a child is almost always also doing something to the other adult in the house. He is shrinking her. He is rewriting her memory. He is making her doubt her own ears. If you have a daughter, or a sister, or a friend who has gotten quieter and smaller since she met a new man, That is not nothing. That is information. Take it seriously. Do not assume she would tell you if it was bad. The whole point of what he is doing to her is to make sure she can't tell you. The third thing, and this is the hardest one. Look at the kids in your own family. Really look at them. Not the way grandparents look, which is a kind of soft, proud blur. Look at them the way a stranger would. Are they thinner than they were last Christmas? Do they flinch? Do they go quiet when a certain adult walks in the room? Have they stopped doing a thing they used to love? Are they covering parts of their body they didn't used to cover? These are not small things. These are alarms. A child cannot ring the alarm themselves. Somebody older has to hear it ringing and walk toward the sound. I almost didn't. I almost slept through it. The only reason I'm telling you this story tonight, the only reason my grandson is upstairs in our guest room right now, asleep with a dog at his feet, is because at 1:47 in the morning on a Tuesday in October, my phone rang and I picked it up. That is the entire margin. That is how thin the margin was between the family I have now and the family I would have had. So I'm going to ask you one favor before I sign off. Tonight or tomorrow, sometime this week, call somebody. Call a kid in your family you haven't talked to in a while. Call a grown daughter who's been quiet on the phone lately. Call a sister whose new boyfriend you don't like, and you can't quite say why. Don't make it a big thing. Don't make a speech. Just ask how they're doing and then shut up and listen. Listen for what isn't being said. Listen for the pause. Listen for the part where they almost say something and then change the subject. That pause is the whole story. That pause was my grandson for a year and a half. I'm Roy. I'm 67 years old. I'm a grandfather. And I almost slept through the most important phone call of my life. I'm telling you this so you don't sleep through yours. Thanks for listening. Hug your people tonight. I've thought about that night more times than I can count. The drive to St. Mercy. The look on Lenora's face in that waiting room. The sound my grandson made on the phone when he wasn't sure if I believe him. And every time I come back to the same hard truth, which is that nothing in this story happened by accident. Every piece of it was caused by something earlier, and every piece of it caused something later. Cyrus didn't break my grandson's arm because he lost his temper one Tuesday afternoon. He broke it because for a year and a half, nobody had told him no. He had tested the waters with a flick on the ear, and nobody had stopped him. He had moved up to a grab on the neck, and nobody had stopped him. He had moved up to a grab on the neck, and nobody had stopped him. Each small cruelty that went unanswered was permission for the next one. That is how it always works. A man like that does not wake up violent. He is built slowly by every adult around him who looked the other way. I include myself in that. I sat at his Thanksgiving table and I noticed Tobias going quiet, and I told myself it wasn't my business. That was my contribution. I've had to make peace with that. And the way I made peace with it was by deciding I would never look away from a child again as long as I am breathing. What saved my grandson in the end was not luck. It was three things. And I want my children and grandchildren to remember these three things long after I am gone. The first is decency. Tobias had a doctor that night who could have signed off on the cast and gone home. And instead, Dr. Asher chose to ask a hard question of a stranger in a hallway. That is what a decent man does when nobody is watching. The second is wits. My wife Annette, in the first 30 seconds, told me write down every time, do not put your hands on him, do this right. She thought clearly while I was still shaking. Clear thinking in a crisis is not a gift you are born with. It is a thing you build by reading and listening and paying attention to how the world actually works, so that when the worst night of your life arrives, you have something to draw on besides panic. And the third is grit. Lenora is the one who shows me this one. She had to sit in a room and admit she had been a coward. She had to spend 2 years rebuilding a mind that another person had spent 2 years tearing down. She had to apologize to her own son and then earn his trust back one small Tuesday at a time. That takes a kind of stubbornness that most people never have to find in themselves, and I am prouder of my daughter today than I have ever been of anyone. If you take nothing else from an old man tonight, Take this. Be decent when no one is looking. Keep your wits about you so you can act when it counts. And when you fall, get up, because the people who love you are watching to learn how it's done.